Hey guys, welcome back with this chord scale relationships, the major scale and the whole half step pattern. You should now know the whole and half step pattern off by heart. And then we looked at where the key signatures came from, moved on to building triads from the scale, so you should know where the scales and the chords relate to each other. Then we looked at the puzzle system, how to piece those chords together. So if you ever come up with a chord progression that's in a major key now, you should be fairly comfortable with finding the key for it, and therefore being able to improvise a little bit more freely over it. We then looked at some of the 7th chords, like the E minor 7, dominant 7 chord, and then the major 7 chord. Classic jazz progression there. You should now be able to work out what key you're in when you're coming across 7th chords, because the same theory applies, alright? Okay, I just wanted to use this part here to talk a little bit about extended chords. Now we're not going to look at how to name the chords. So we're not going to look at the 11th chords and major 13th chords and all these funky sounding names. We're not going to bother with that. If you want a lesson on that, go over to the website rexpearson.com. It's free to join, and just post up a suggest a lesson. You're going to know where to place them in this puzzle system, so you can improvise over them. It's the same theory, it's not too hard. Alright, let's just have a look at how we came up with the 7th chord. We took the 1st, 3rd, 5th and the 7th note of that C major scale. Remember, you should know this shape by now, going up and down. And we took the 1st, 3rd, 5th and 7th. Now have a look on the fretboard there of the notes you have available. What notes haven't we played? You'll find that it will be the D, which is the 2nd note. It will also be the F, which is the 4th note, and finally it will be the A, which is the 6th note of the scale. So the 2nd, the 4th and the 6th. So far they don't really match up to any of the chords so far, but let me tell you something a little bit about those notes. The 2nd, 4th and 6th are actually the 9th, the 11th and the 13th chords. Why do they have different numbers when it's the 2nd, 4th and 6th? Why do we call them 9th, 11th and 13th? Generally when these chords are played, you will play the extended notes in the higher register. Generally they'll be quite high pitched. So if you were to take a C major chord, and let's say we wanted to add that 2nd note to that chord. Let's say we took the 2nd note, which is a D. If I place the D in the lower register, so if I play the open D string here, listen to how it sounds. Okay, that is a 9th chord of some form. But if I place the D in the upper register, have a listen to how it sounds. Generally people would agree that the 2nd one sounds a little bit better. If you can place the extended note in the highest note possible, a nicer sound. It's not a rule, obviously you can break that, but this is important for why we name the chords 9th, 11th and 13th. If I played the scale again to you, the major scale, it contains 8 notes. If I go one more up, that's the 9th note, and what you would find, if you know your fretboard, that note there is a D, and we've already discussed that the 2nd note of the scale is a D. So it's just a D an octave up. Okay, I'm just going to demonstrate to you a couple of the extended chords and give you a couple of rules as well that generally apply to these. We're going to look at a major 9th chord. It's very important that you don't get rid of the chord tones that you had before. If you've got to get rid of them, it generally runs in this order. You can get rid of the 5th first. If you're trying to build a chord and you can't find a way of playing all of them at once, because you can't, you've only got 4 fingers going there and maybe a thumb, you can get rid of the 5th, which if we're playing it over G here, over C, you can get rid of the 5th, which is the G. If you've got to get rid of another one, generally you can get rid of the root note, which is contrary to what most people think. The 3rd and the 7th are the most important chord tones because they are what define the chord quality, whether it's major, minor, or dominant, diminished, or the augmented chord, which we haven't covered yet. You can get rid of the root. The 3rd and the 7th are the key ones that you want to keep in the chord. Okay, so bear that in mind whenever you're trying to create extended chords, that you want to keep the 3rd and the 7th in there. Here we go. First one is a major 9th chord. It sounds like this. I'm skipping over the A string here and just playing the root, the 7th, the 3rd, the 5th, and then this new note, the extended, which is the 9th. Really nice sounding major 9 chord there. The next chord is an 11th chord, so we're adding a new extension. Now with the 11th chords, a funny little rule that they came up with here, you don't play the 3rd. Now the reason for that is fairly simple. The 3rd note and the 4th note are only a half step apart. They're very close together. And if you play the 2 at the same time, the 3rd and the 11th, you get this funny, sounds a little bit on your ears. So they decided not to put in a 3rd when you're playing an 11th chord. So I'm going to get rid of that 3rd, which is an E, and I'm going to play a root, the 5th, the major 7, so we've still got the 7 there, and then the 11. This is an 11th chord. Now that could be, well that would be a major 11th chord, but you don't have the 3rd in there to say whether or not it is. Again, with chord naming, you've got to suggest a lesson over on the website if you want to learn how to name your chords. For now, I'm just teaching you some shapes to play. Final one then is a major 13 chord. So I'm going to play the same as a major 7 chord. And I'm going to add the 13th, the 6th. So we have a chord that sounds like this. Now that's got the root, the major 7, the major 3rd. Doesn't have the 5th because I didn't have enough fingers to play it. I could play it like that, but I don't really want to because my fingers hurt today. So that's a way that we can play a major 13th chord, and I've skipped over the 5th, which I said earlier you can do. The 5th is the least important note in a chord. So there's 3 shapes for you. They're all major and they're all extended. You'll probably want to go out and learn a couple more shapes. You'll probably want to learn the minor, 9, 11 and 13. At least one shape is good enough. And then a dominant minor, sorry, a dominant 9th, 11th and 13th. But remember that rule, with the 11th, the 3rd needs to disappear. And the same is true if you're trying to play a major, let's say 13 chord, you're supposed to get rid of that 11th note there because it will clash with the 3rd. So if you want the 3rd in it, don't play the 11th. If you want an 11th chord sound, get rid of the 3rd. Otherwise it's going to clash, alright?